Welcome in, everybody, to the CFB Nation All-America podcast presented by Twisted Tea. I'm Bill Trocchi, senior editor at sportingnews.com, alongside Bill Bender, our national college football writer at sportingnews.com. Thank you to everyone for listening to this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And for those of you watching on our YouTube channel at CFB Nation, if you have the time to leave a review on Apple, that would be great. If you have time to leave some comments and a like on YouTube, that would be great. Thank you to Irish Breakdown, your source for Notre Dame football information. They have a tremendous lineup of podcasts and great stories at irishbreakdown.com. You can follow Bill on Twitter at BillBender92, and you can follow me at Bill Trocchi. And keep an eye on the main Sporting News account at Sporting News. As we mentioned on our last show, we are 1 week away from week 0. And then, of course, week 1 hits. And with week 1 comes changes to our schedule here at the CFB Nation All-America podcast. We are going to have a live show late on Saturday nights on our YouTube channel as the action nationally kind of wraps up sometime between 11 and midnight, depending on, what's going on out there. Bill and I will hop on the YouTube channel and we will discuss the day's events. That will be obviously available right on the YouTube channel immediately. And then on Sunday morning, it will be in the podcast feed on your Apple and Spotify, and it'll obviously still be there on YouTube. And then during the week, we will have shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays as we get ready for each week during the season. For today's show, we're doing a little buying and selling, Bill. We're not talking realignment. We're not talking TV media deals. We're not talking grant of rights. Do you want to talk some football?
Yeah, and I had a question. Is this confined to, do we have to buy and sell teams in the AP Top 25? I'm always a fan. It can be outside the Top 25. I'm going to keep mine within, as I did my prep for this, because, our editor, Elliot, is a polls don't matter type guy. I am a polls always matter type guy, because it's something we can look at the end of the season and say, these guys didn't live up to expectations. These guys did. And at the end of the day, it's like, I always say there's something about being able to put number 1 up. We beat number 1. And that's one of my favorite parts about college football. And we're not going to buy or sell Georgia, are we? They're exempt from the conversation.
I will say, yes, they are exempt. But I will say, I shared this observation with you that the preseason poll in August sets the tone for the season. Like you said, sets the expectations. And it's funny because everybody does the way too early top 25 in January, right after the national championship game. And everyone puts a disclaimer out. This is before signing day. This is before all the transfers are going to leave. There's going to be some coaching changes. This isn't going to look anything like it. Well, guess what? You put together a composite way too early top 25 in January for SI and ESPN and The Athletic and USA Today. You did about 8 or 9, including ours. And you came up with a composite way too early top 25. And I looked at that composite AP top 25, and then I looked at the one in August by AP, which is 60 voters across the country. And 16 of the top 25 teams are within 2 spots of where they were in the way too early in January. So really, the narrative of the season, to me, it's not set in August. It's almost set in January.
Yeah, well, and another observation we had yesterday. So the coaches poll is out, the AP poll's out, ours is out. And I like comparing those three right when it happens. And really, the number one observation is the top 7 of all 3 polls is exactly the same with one exception. The AP poll has Ohio State and Alabama flipped, which to me, you can do it either way. Like you could do Alabama 3, Ohio State 4. I'm okay with Ohio State 3, Alabama 4. Top 5, exact same 5 teams. 6 and 7, Penn State, or USC Penn State. So really, these polls begin at 8 with who are you buying? Florida State, Washington, Clemson. And this is, I'm going to say how I approached our little buy-sell exercise is, when do you buy things? You buy things when nobody else is. So you're on to that. If you were, I don't know much about the stock market. I assume that's what you do. You buy the stock when nobody else is, when it's down or kind of off, as I like to put it. But why would I buy something that everybody else is buying?
You can believe in the hype. You're buying it. You're buying the hype.
Buying the hype
You're buying the
of
hype.
so
You're
like
buying the success.
there's one team on here that is going to get me in a little trouble, but we'll get to it.
Okay. Well, give me your first buy. We'll do your buys, and then we'll do my buys, and then your sells and my sells. Well, give me your first buy.
I mean, this people will be like, roll their eyes. I'll buy Alabama. I'm buying Alabama can go 12-0. Like,
woohoo!
So why wouldn't I? All of their tough games are at home. I mean, that's like you're buying Alabama. Not a lot of people are. They're assuming they're behind Georgia right now. There's not a quarterback answer. They play Texas. They play Texas A&M. They do have to go down to Texas A&M, but they have LSU and Tennessee. And I think a lot of people think LSU is better than Alabama. So I will buy the stock in Nick Saban that this is probably the most off we've been on them in the preseason because of that quarterback question. I think they'll figure it out. I think they have more talent than everybody on their schedule until they play Georgia. I think they could beat Georgia. I think they're probably the only team that could beat Georgia on the regular season schedule. There's only 2 teams, maybe 3 that can beat Georgia in the country, and Alabama's still one of them.
Yep. So I hope this doesn't happen throughout. I had Alabama as well, and I did not think you would because they're so highly ranked, but they are a tiny bit under the radar. They got very few first place votes, and you're right. I looked at, they have 5 AP top 25 teams on their schedule. The 4 highest ranked ones are coming to Tuscaloosa, and Alabama is 49-1 in their last 50 home games. 49-1.
Yeah, and the
last team that beat them was that LSU team with Joe Burrow and 75 first round draft picks on that team. I don't see anyone out there on their schedule with that kind of talent. LSU's good this year. They're not nearly as good as that 2019 team. So, yeah, they just, couldn't put it all together last year. And I don't know what it was, because Will Anderson, by all accounts, great leader. Bryce Young, great leader. Something didn't fit. And they played, he can say, oh, we lost 2 games last play of the game. They escaped twice too. They escaped against Texas. They escaped against Texas A&M. So they had 4 games that could have gone either way. They won 2, they lost 2. They finished where they should have finished. But I think there's a certain, I don't know. I think that the torch nationally has been passed to Georgia, and I think Alabama likes that. I think that likes being a notch behind, especially someone in their own conference. Yes. And they're going to be ready to lower the boom this year. And even if it is Tyler Buchner who wins it, like, he looked good in the Gator Bowl. He can win. They've won with lesser quarterbacks, and,
right?
They don't need a first round quarterback. It's always helpful, but last year you had one. You lost 2 games. You struggled in 2 others.
Right. So, yeah, totally agree. So, are we doing a sell next?
No, you can do another buy. Let's do 3 buys.
All right. I'm going, because I'm buying Alabama, this looks bad, but I'm going to buy Texas.
Oh,
I'm going to buy Texas.
That doesn't surprise me. You've been Mr. Texas, but that's okay. Go ahead. I don't have.
Well, because people love making it a punchline. Texas is back, and we've, as Sporting News, has used that tweet with the buttons on it so many times. I think Jordan Heck does that, and I've made fun of him about it. But it's like, they've got the talent, they've got all the pieces, they've got NFL offense. I remember just being blown away at watching their spring game, being like, okay, it's here. And I just think talent wins in college football. So if they can figure out these 1-score games, like every game, with the exception of Alabama, that Texas plays this year, when they step on the field, they'll have more talent. Doesn't mean they're better than TCU or Kansas State or how many Oklahoma's also ranked, but this is the same team that beat Oklahoma 49-0 last year. So
what happens if Alabama hammers them?
That's what I'm worried about. There's a catch to the end of this game that I'm going to bring at the end that influenced this pick. So Texas is my other buy. I think Quinn Ewers has a big year. I love the receiving options, and that defense can figure a few things out. I mean, the other end of it is, how can you buy Alabama and Texas? Because I think Alabama will end up beating Texas, and Texas will still win the Big 12.
Well, I'm going to stay in the Big 12, but I'm going somewhere else. I'm buying Kansas State.
Mm-hmm.
I think they went 10-4 last year, 10-3 during the regular season. Of course, they beat TCU in the Big 12 championship game. Got buried in the Sugar Bowl by Alabama. Their over-under is 8.5 this year. I think it's a safe over. Their schedule, they have Missouri is their only remote challenge for non-conference. So I think you can pencil in 3-0 for the Wildcats there. And they only have 2 ranked teams. They do not play Oklahoma this year. They only have 2 ranked teams the rest of the way, Texas and TCU. So even if they lose to Texas, I can see them beating TCU again and, going at least close to 11, possibly 11-1. They got a lot of experience back on that offense. Colin Klein's back as offensive coordinator. He interviewed at Notre Dame, did not get the job. And Will Howard returns at quarterback. Entering the Sugar Bowl last year, he had 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And of course, they beat TCU. He was 5-2 as a starter. He lost to TCU in the regular season, avenged that at the end of the year, and then they lost the Sugar Bowl to Alabama. Defense is usually pretty stout. I just think with all the noise around Texas, noise coming from you primarily, and Oklahoma, they're a little bit under the radar. You got the 4 new members coming in to the Big 12. You got all the expansion talk. Like Kansas State, they're just kind of under the radar. Their best player is an offensive lineman. That's not going to get a lot of attention, but I think they're going to surprise, and that's why I'm buying K-State.
That's not a bad pick at all. Yeah, it's safer than Texas. If we were talking about like which one should you buy, I mean, everybody would take the safe one. But if Texas wins, if you buy Texas, the reward will be much greater than if you buy Kansas State, because that's
higher ceiling for sure.
Yes. My last one's Wisconsin. Did you pick them too?
Yes.
Of course. Well, then we're smart buyers. Well, you know what? I'll give my reasons first, and
okay.
I won't even give the reasons because I'm assuming we have the same ones. I will just tell a story. Is Luke Fickell at Big Ten Media Day? Somebody asked him about Ohio State. Of course, you knew that was coming. Given his entire career that he almost coached there, and he just said, "I won't allow myself to think about it," but I did. And when I look at their schedule, I see 7-0. I see 7-0 if they beat Iowa. They got to take care of Iowa and Illinois. They got to go out to Washington State and win. I get that. They got to go to Purdue and win. And they are changing everything. It's going to look very different. And I think in a different way, it's going to be very good, because I think they're going to get to that Ohio State game at either 6-1 or 7-0. And I think it could be 7-0. And then you start to wonder, in Central Ohio, at least, the tenor of that's going to be, okay, Ryan Day, you better win this one, because this is the guy that some people were saying, well, why isn't he the coach after the Michigan game last year? So I buy them as a Big Ten West champ. I buy them as a program long-term. And I think they get back to that team that's like borderline playoff team that in the 12-team setup will become an every year playoff team. So I just think they're a smart buy. Even in the new Big Ten, they're going to compete.
Yeah, but so looking at their schedule this year, they have 2 ranked teams, and one of them is number 25, Iowa, and it's at home. So they have 10 unranked teams, and then Iowa's visiting, and then, of course, Ohio State. They lose the Ohio State game. That's fine. I can pencil that in for a loss. If I'm Wisconsin, I'm looking at every other game is within reach. I mean, very within reach. They could win 10 games. I think their over-under is – it is 8.5. So again, I think they can challenge for 10 wins, depending on how the chemistry is between the new offensive coordinator, right? Phil Longo, who his last 2 quarterbacks are Sam Howell, who's supposed to start for the Commanders, and Drake May, who's supposed to be a top 5 QB. Tanner Mordecai had a lot of success at SMU, and he went to Oklahoma out of high school. So he's got some talent. He's got some experience. It's going to be a radical change, but he's got a 1,200-yard running back coming back, right, behind him, and Braylon Allen. And they have 8 starters back on defense, and they were ranked 17th in scoring defense last year. So defense wasn't what got Paul Chryst fired. It was the offense. So, I think Wisconsin should be and is, right, the favorite in the Big Ten West. But I think they're going to challenge for double-digit wins for sure. So, all right, give me your third buy. No, that was your third buy. Sorry,
That's,
give me your first sell. All right, we're on to the sells now.
I'm almost
Who are
sure
you
that
selling?
I'm almost sure you don't have them, and this was the hard one that's going to get me in trouble.
Okay.
It's Penn State,
Oh,
and
you
I'm
wanted
selling.
Penn State.
No, I figured nobody does because everybody's buying it. Everybody's buying Penn State because they're going to. And now let me preface it with this: they're going to win 10 games this year. They're going to win 10 games.
But you're still selling.
They're not going to win the Big Ten. So, like, I think they're going to go exactly to the same spot they went last year, to a whatever the Big Ten New Year's Day Six Bowl is. Because I just don't see them winning in Columbus. They can prove me wrong. They go to Ohio State and win, and they can do that. Are they going to beat Michigan? Michigan ran for 418 yards against them last year. And what's Michigan going to do when they come to Happy Valley? They're going to hand the ball to Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. So it's a sell from the standpoint of I don't think they're going to go 12-0. I don't think they're going to win the Big Ten. I think we got to wait. Drew Aller hasn't started a game yet. And yes, they have a ton of talent and they have difference makers. There's one stat that I just keep looking at. They were outscored 56-20 in the second half against Ohio State and Michigan last year. That's it. You got to beat those teams. So what do I always say in our college football planning meetings? Wake me up when they beat Ohio State. So I said that about Michigan for years, and they finally did it.
You're wide awake now.
They've got Ohio State's attention. Why do they have Ohio State's attention? They're the only Big Ten team that's beat Ryan Day. So if Penn State makes me look bad here, that's fine because that means they delivered on the hype. But I think they will go 10-2 and play in
third place in the division,
Orange Bowl, and that's not improving. That's just doing the same thing.
Right. And we've gone over Franklin's record against a 4-14.
Yes, 4-14. So they got to win that game. So I think it's a smart sell.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can see. I mean, it's on the table for him. Well, the X factor is the quarterback. We'll see what he does. My first sell, and I don't think you're going to like it. USC. You've got USC in the playoff. I say no way. No way to USC. They went 11-2 last year, 11-3 overall. Their over-under is 9.5. The schedule, they have 4 ranked teams, 2 at home, 2 on the road. But both pairs of games are back-to-back, so that's not ideal. They got at Notre Dame and then Utah the following week. And then 2 weeks later, they have Washington and then on the road at Oregon. So they got 2 back-to-back challenges kind of late in the year, But are they a top 5 team? They're going to win a lot of games. Obviously, right? Caleb Williams is awesome. Dorian Singer transferred in from Arizona, the wide receiver. He was first team All Pac-12 last year. It's all about the defense and the philosophy, under Lincoln Riley throughout his career. He doesn't emphasize it. I mean, it sounds silly to say that a football coach would not emphasize defense, but he just thinks he can outscore everybody. They were 94th in the nation in points allowed last year. They gave up 43 or more in 4 times, both losses to Utah. They actually beat UCLA in a shootout, and then they lost Tulane in the Cotton Bowl. Riley, he kept Alex Grinch, defensive coordinator. They've got Bear Alexander transferring in from Georgia to help the defensive line. And he obviously should have an impact, but I don't see a top 5 team with a one-sided defense like this. It is always his defensive. I don't know if it's just the overall team philosophy about recruiting and let's just get the ball back and score. I don't care if they score. I just want the ball back because I'm going to go score kind of philosophy. But it's even in Oklahoma, it caught up to him and he would lose games in a high scoring fashion. You can't win all of them. And I think people are you have them winning the Pac-12, going to the playoff. I don't see it. I don't see a team that was 94th in scoring defense jumping up to, they need to be in the 30s or 40s, I think, to get in the playoff. And I just don't see that kind of improvement.
The reason I'm buying is because I'm selling Utah. And I have to almost because it's like an annual right to sell Utah anyway, because we do it every year and they've won back-to-back Pac-12 championships. But it's the quarterback situation. There's an August 10th report from the Salt Lake Tribune where Kyle Whittingham saying the quarterback situation's still in flux. Well, if Cam Rising isn't ready to go early, the bad news is you play Florida, They could lose that game at home. I mean, it was close. They lost it last year. They play Baylor week 2 in Waco. Not an easy game, not an easy road trip. So who made that schedule on top of their Pac-12 road schedule where they're playing at Oregon State, at Washington, at USC? They're not getting out of that without at least one bruise. And then they play Oregon back-to-back with USC. It's of the teams capable of winning the Pac-12, Utah has the toughest schedule. And they have a quarterback question. And Kyle Whittingham, again, just like this just means Penn State's going to win the Big Ten. Kyle Whittingham's going to double bird me and win all these games because it's Utah and they do this. But they're also leaving the Pac-12. So there's going to be, when they play USC and Washington and Oregon, those games are going to have a little bit of added intensity because they're not going to see each other for a while. So they're one that I totally respect what they do as a program and all those kind of things, but I'm going to sell them just for this year.
So what's the rising report? I mean, obviously he got hurt in the Rose Bowl.
Still rehabbing.
It's usually a 9-10 month kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, if he's not on the field, because he made them go last year. He's such a big reason why they beat USC both times that I would, Pac-12 wise, I'm buying USC and Washington and even Oregon State on some level a little more than Utah, which I know is just gross and unfair, but it's what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I mean, he's a big piece, needless to say. You're going to be surprised at my next sell. Duke. You knew I'm on board with the Riley Leonard, the quarterback and all that. But so Duke went 8-4 in the regular season last year, 9-4 overall. And their over-under is 6.5. And I think they're going to struggle to get a bowl game this year. Now, why is that? They have a lot of experience back. I like their quarterback. They should score close to 30 points a game this year. But Duke played one of the easiest schedules in the nation last year. They played one team that finished in the AP top 25, and that was Pitt at 22. And Pitt only got in because they won their bowl game. 6 of their 8 regular season wins came against either an FCS team or teams that won 3 or fewer games. So that was 6 out of their 8 wins. This year, here comes Clemson. Here comes Florida State. Here comes Notre Dame. So Duke could be even better, but I don't think they're going to have a better record. Its schedule is so much harder. It's going to be a challenge to make a bowl game. Like I said, they got a ton of experience coming back on offense. If they score 30 points a game, that would not surprise me. But there's just too many hurdles, too many challenges. They have to play at North Carolina. And Duke pulled one out of a hat against North Carolina last year. I'm sure the Tar Heels haven't forgotten about that one. They're going to want some revenge on that. So this is clearly a schedule, and their schedule it's night and day from last year. And so that while Duke, some people are high on them and hats off to Mike Elko and all that stuff, but some reality could hit this year with a much harder schedule.
Right. Well, you score points with me if you're selling like Duke basketball, like Duke football. Yeah, they're okay. Like, I get you though. They will regress. They will take a step back. My last sell's TCU, which I hate doing because I love Sonny Dykes and how he treats us, and it's mean to do that. But it's kind of I think we talked about this a couple podcasts ago where I don't think they're going to be bad. I think they could start out 7-0. But I see them like I saw Cincinnati a couple years ago. When you lose 8 guys to the NFL at a program like that, you're going to have problems. I mean, just individual matchup problems sometimes. And then you look at their November, they play Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, and Oklahoma. And this was a team that went 6-1 in one-score games last year. This is after a bye week where they play Kansas State. Their schedule is very backloaded. So at least they get to figure it out with Chandler Morris and some of the transfers that they had come in and get ready for that. But I just think in the Big 12, it's going to be tough. I mean, I think Texas, Kansas State, we're both buying them. I think Oklahoma is going to be tremendously improved. I think Texas Tech's not an easy out. And I could see TCU selling them, saying they'll probably go 8-4 or 9-3. And that will be fine, but it's not, if you were buying TCU, last year was the year to do it, because I don't know that it'll ever be that high again.
Right. Yeah. Then, Dykes was, he did such a great job in year one. And that was actually one thing I wanted to mention about when we were talking about Wisconsin and why we were buying Wisconsin with like Luke Fickell. Like, he's a good, established veteran coach taking over a team that last year showed there were three guys basically like that took over, programs in pretty good shape, who were experienced and big name. One was Lincoln Riley, and they did great. One was Brian Kelly, and he did great. And one was Sonny Dykes, and he did great. So I think Luke Fickell sort of fits into that category regarding Wisconsin. So that was one other point I wanted to make about Wisconsin. So, yeah, TCU, I mean, they were such a great story last year. It ended on a sour note. We'll see how they bounce back. And like you said, yeah, that's a tough way to end the schedule. Very, very backloaded. Health will be an issue for them for sure. So my final sell is Florida. We mentioned them on our last podcast. They went 6-6 in the regular season, lost their bowl game. They went 6-7. Their over under this year is only 5.5. So you can the whether or not they're going to make a bowl is very much in question. They play 5 teams in the top 15. And like I said, they had a losing record last season. So the schedule is very challenging. Graham Mertz won the starting job after transferring Wisconsin, where he contributed to Paul Chryst getting fired. Yes. They lost a starting defensive end last week to a torn ACL. Their defense was they gave up over 30 points and 6 losses. They fired their defensive coordinator, but they brought in Austin Armstrong, who's only 29 years old, has 2 years experience as a defensive coordinator at Southern Miss. And before that, he worked with Napier at Louisiana. So Napier obviously likes him, but he's short on experience, and he's going to be facing some really, really good offenses. Recruiting fell off late in Dan Mullen's tenure, and it's showing up right now, right? I mean, they have some skill players like Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne at running back, but there's a lack of experience in the starting 22. I looked at one projected starting 22. They have one senior on offense and defense combined. So we'll see how much patience there is this year in Gainesville. But I don't think I don't think there are high expectations. So I'm not saying
right.
This like, they're not going to make it, whatever. But like, I'm not sure people understand how much of a struggle this might be this year for Florida.
Yeah, and they've fallen behind not only Georgia, but Tennessee, and I would argue Kentucky. So, I mean, and South Carolina.
And
so
they lost to Kentucky and Vanderbilt last year. So like,
right. Like they need to have a bounce back on some level. And I'd be the first to admit, I thought Billy Napier was a home run hire for them, but he's feeling that like weight of those expectations. It's funny because Swamp Kings, I have a screener on that for us, and I've been watching that the last couple nights. Urban Meyer felt that early, and then he built an unbelievable machine. And then, it's good. I'll say that so far, like but it's not going to give viewers what you want. I don't think. If you want to say, they had all the arrest, what about that? That's not what this documentary is so far. I've got 2 parts remaining. 1 part, sorry.
Fans want to see Aaron Hernandez and Tim Tebow drinking beers in a bar.
Well, they're not going to see that. So the one thing I wanted to mention is what I had a hold on this too, was when I was doing this exercise, I was like, there's 2 schools I really want to put on here. I can't do it. And it was Florida State and Clemson. So I was basically like, my cop out would be, you have to hold Florida State through September, because unless you want to say, I think they're going to beat LSU and Clemson.
That's their whole season is September.
Like, you love their offense, love Jordan Travis, love Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman. They're going to be really good. They also could be 2-2 at the end of the month and done. Like, and then Clemson, a lot of people are off them, similar to Alabama. Hired Garrett Riley, have Cade Klubnik. Their defense is stacked. A lot of top 50 guys play Florida State at the end of the month. So those are the 2 that I'm like, I really want to buy, particularly Florida State. You really want to buy this stock, but it's like, I mean, the risk right there.
Right.
Could be over in a month, or could be a college football playoff team with a Heisman winner. So I think they're the toughest one even over Clemson a little bit to dive in on.
So, yeah, that's our show for today. Was it fun talking college football instead of realignment and
Yes.
media rights? And
I got the game. We'll have week 0 picks at Sporting News. Yesterday I was breaking down New Mexico State and UMass
that's right. That's the
Sports
primetime
Grid.
game on ESPN, baby.
Jerry Kill and Don Brown. So, I mean, it felt good to kind of just like kick the tires and look at the spreads and, all right, we're going to make some picks here. So I'm excited. You're excited. That was a fun. Joe was great this week. Talking Tennessee. It was a fun week.
Yep. So thanks again to everyone for listening to the CFB Nation All-America podcast, brought to you by Twisted Tea. Remember, once the season starts, we'll be coming at you at least 3 times a week, once late on Saturday night, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays during the week. So enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you next week.